Hello there, and this evening I'm going to talk about magnesium. This is my serious talk on magnesium, and I have plenty to say. So, I've read 3 books on magnesium. Carolyn Dean's book, she's well known. Fredrickson, it'll come to me as first name, a doctor who wrote a book on a question and answer book on magnesium answers, it's called, and a book by Thomas E. Levy on magnesium as well. Now also followed lots of podcasts, and I've also I've journeyed with magnesium and through a magnesium loading or saturation program, whichever way you like to call it. And basically, so I've come to know a bit about magnesium. And I'm simply inviting everybody to listen in. Please do make comments, challenge, whatever you fancy. But it might not be a sort of introduction to magnesium, because rather than pick up a sort of tip like, oh, okay, I will do what Roland's saying about magnesium. I will take this in the morning, this in the evening, lunchtime and so forth. I don't think so. I don't think that's the approach. I think this is for somebody who already knows a little bit about magnesium. So by eating magnesium, consuming magnesium, we become more like a plant. By consuming calcium, we become more like stone. We calcify. And so magnesium and calcium are antagonists. They work in balance. So if you're taking lots of magnesium, your calcium might be a bit lower. That might be a good thing. Let me explain. If you're taking lots of calcium, cheese and milk and so forth, and we get calcium from crops, then you may be low on magnesium. If you're taking a lot of vitamin D3, you may deplete your magnesium, because other things can deplete our magnesium. And that's a mistake that happened to the doctor in the second book I read. Also, it's a mistake that I made myself. I depleted my own magnesium levels taking 20,000 international units of vitamin D a day. Anyway, let's start from the beginning. What is magnesium? Well, element number 12. It's the third most, after water, in seawater, it's the third most abundant element. So you've got chlorine at about 55%, sodium at 30%, tiny bit over 30%, and then number 3, magnesium at 3.7%. Now, magnesium is a very light metal, a very light earth metal, sort of silvery white, certainly burns with a very white flame, very strong and light. So I used to have a hobby in, I suppose I still do, in photography. So they like to make camera bodies out of magnesium, possibly magnesium and aluminium, a combination, because they're strong and light. Now, I mention aluminium because in the body, actually, sometimes aluminium starts taking the place of magnesium, which is not great. I mean, magnesium is very delicate. Everything competes for magnesium. And things combine with magnesium. Now, so magnesium follows the theme of disconnect with the planet, our grand disconnect, the sun, the earth. And now, magnesium, I'm claiming, because we are very deficient in magnesium. So very likely we lack in magnesium, and we have calcium in abundance. Now, our crops, for example, and the earth are severely depleted of magnesium. So we only have about 10% of the magnesium content in cabbage, lettuce, tomato, and spinach. So in other words, 100 years ago in 1914, there was, if you could get 400 milligrams of magnesium in any of these 4 crops, now you can only get 40, 10%, 10 to 20% of what we could 100 years ago. I've talked about tetany, sheep, cattle falling over, twitching and dying because they can't get enough magnesium from the grass. That's all they eat. So it might be worth, there are a few other clips I've done that mention magnesium. I've been creeping up to this theme, starting from wheatgrass that has chlorophyll in it, that has magnesium as its nucleus, going on to my Shenong clip, which talks about our electrolytes, in particular 4 main electrolytes, and magnesium is important to switch off our fight and flight mode. So calcium switches it back on, sodium switches off our rest and digest, we don't want to switch it off, and potassium switches it back on. And I mentioned in the Krebs cycle, in our mitochondria, we need, by the way, a lot of magnesium. Most of 90 to 95% of magnesium is found in our mitochondria. Book number 3 talks about it, starts like that. And yeah, we need potassium, magnesium, and vitamin B1 to start off the Krebs cycle. Now, this brings me to my first point. When we are in times of fear and stress, what's one of the first things we lose? Magnesium, I'm afraid. What's one of the first things, if you've watched my stone dance clip about Stanton Drew, you will have seen that I talk about petrification. When we fear, when we're frightened, we petrify, turn to stone, literally, because calcification is what happens. And anybody who's my age, 60, will have a number of plaques in their arteries, a number of plaques around their body. When they grow to a critical level, we get a stroke, we get problems with our heart. So magnesium can really solve a lot of these problems, because magnesium can dissolve these plaques, if you like, that build up of calcium. So I'm going to suggest straight away, be careful if you're taking a calcium supplement. However, you might actually need, I think, so one book I read starts off by saying half the world is deficient in magnesium. Next book says it's 75% is deficient in magnesium. Well, how about we're all deficient in magnesium? I think. So we do need to supplement magnesium, but it's not that easy, because while our body holds on to calcium very well, it eliminates magnesium as soon as we take a little too much. And we have to replenish magnesium, day-to-day replenishment of magnesium needs to occur. And it's hard to get hold of, because we are not getting it in our lettuce, in our leafy greens, not anywhere near the amount that we need. In other words, you can eat more calories than you need in the day, and you still haven't reached the required daily RDA requirement levels. Now, if you're low in potassium, and we need a lot of potassium, 4,700 milligrams, so if you're low in potassium, well, guess where you have to start? You have to, a prerequisite for topping up your potassium levels is to work on your magnesium levels. And it's a prerequisite for so many things. 80% of our bodily functions require magnesium. So, so for example, I've done a couple of tips about clips about nitric oxide, and I mention the endothelial layer producing nitric oxide. Well, it doesn't produce nitric oxide if you're deficient in magnesium. And I recently felt a deficiency in magnesium because I was taking too much D, as I pointed out. So once I learnt a lot about magnesium, from the fact that it's an antagonist to calcium, the fact that it's as I mentioned in my stone dance, it's a calcium channel blocker without the side effects of the medication, the calcium channel medication. It's a natural calcium channel blocker, because unless you're depleted of magnesium, in which case calcium will flood the cell and make havoc with your mitochondria. Mitochondria give us energy, so you can imagine mitochondria always switched on, which is what happens to our muscles. If we've got too much calcium, our muscles fire quite well. They can contract, but they cannot relax so well. You need magnesium for that, and possibly potassium, for sure potassium as well. So where do we start getting magnesium? Well, I'll come to that in a minute, but let me tell you another interesting fact about magnesium. It calms us down, it relaxes us, very much so, our muscles. But as I recently experienced, magnesium binds to our GABA A receptors, neural inhibitors. This calms us down. If you take a lot of magnesium, so one afternoon I had loaded myself with magnesium for the day, and I fell asleep on the lawn. Actually, I was drowsy. It will put you into a drowsy state. Now that's not such a bad thing, because I really started focusing on magnesium because of a nerve that I have in my foot and goes up my leg, and which is not happy every 3 days. So little Larry, as I like to call him, immediately modulated because of magnesium. Magnesium had an effect. So I discovered, thanks to John Wilkes actually, magnesium sulfate, Epsom bath water salt, which was discovered in something like 1650, I'm going to say, by somebody in Epsom, when he discovered his cattle wasn't drinking from a certain well. Well, a century later they discovered, they called this thing magnesium, named after a part of Greece called Magnesia. Magnesium is. Anyway, this water has a very good effect on my foot, because my foot absorbs it, magnesium sulfate, and it's one way of getting it into me. And because it modulated my pain, I immediately knew that magnesium was a factor in my recovery of my nerve, which is still ongoing. Now, I've had a period of 2 weeks of magnesium loading, as I call it, or magnesium saturation. So before I'll mention all the different magnesiums and magnesium compounds, let me just talk about 2 broad categories. We've got inorganic and organic magnesium. Organic are bound to carbon-containing molecules, and inorganic are bound to mineral salts. And magnesium bound to organic molecules such as amino acids, Krebs cycle intermediates are better absorbed. In other words, they have higher bioavailability. They're gentler on the digestion, meaning there's less laxative effect, and they often provide additional health benefits from the organic ligand. Inorganic salts such as Epsom salts are also used, or magnesium chloride, but these are usually quite a bit cheaper and have lesser bioavailability. So, for example, I used to just take a magnesium citrate pill before bed. I could sometimes feel it dissolve in my stomach and really relax me. But magnesium citrate, I would seriously consider magnesium citrate if it was the only pill of magnesium I were taking during the day, because we absorb only 50% of it, meaning the other 50% is eliminated. By eliminated, I mean through bowel movement, through your stool. In other words, things can get a little bit runny if we take too much magnesium. So I'm going to tell you roughly what my magnesium loading program was all about. I'd sort of start the day with a magnesium glycinate. Now it's important to realize that magnesium as an ion only exists in liquid form, so magnesium has to bind with something. So the compound magnesium glycinate is well absorbed, 80% of it is absorbed, and especially if it's chelated in a chelated form, meaning it has a ligand and binds to the magnesium in two different posts. Two different places. This makes it highly absorbable. After which I might take magnesium water. This is just water with about 180 grams, 250 milliliters of water with magnesium. Again, I think it's glycinate in it, which is quite a lot. So that's very thirst quenching. If my nerve is not so well, I might have an Epsom foot bath, getting more magnesium into my system. Now, I do not follow meal times at all, because I spread the intake of magnesium through the day. So at lunchtime, it might be magnesium malate. In the afternoon, maybe another magnesium. Let's say in the evening I might take magnesium threonate, famous for crossing the blood barrier and getting into the brain. That's more to do with the threonate. Then we have lots of types of magnesium. Magnesium taurate, which combines with taurine, which was first identified in an ox gallbladder. So anyway, you can look into that. We're talking about the compound magnesium binds with, how efficient that is in getting to the body. And the important thing is to get magnesium into the body. But you're always going to be up against a runny bowel at some stage if you take so much. Now, I forgot to mention the sprays. I will also spray magnesium chloride on my skin, good for muscle cramps, etc. People with restless leg at night, other things of the sort. And we mostly need magnesium. We notice it on our muscles late at night and early morning. That's when the body really screams out for magnesium. If you take a diuretic, you might lose a bit more magnesium. Now, this is very personal. This is not applying to everybody, but my blood pressure came down a lot by taking magnesium. A lot. So I actually have to reduce my medication because otherwise my diastolic comes down to something like 73, which I've never seen before. But it's obvious the magnesium plays a big role here, and I wish I'd known about it sooner. Anyway, I know about it now. So that's an important concept. If you're taking magnesium and you have hypertension medication, high blood pressure medication, you must keep monitoring your blood pressure to see that the magnesium's not bringing it down too much. If you're taking a lot of vitamin D, or even if you get it from the sun, in order to activate the vitamin D, magnesium acts on your liver and on the two pathways that go through your kidneys to produce active vitamin D. So magnesium is required in these two stages, and it's possible to deplete your magnesium like this, or to run a little bit low. So with regards running low on magnesium, it's obvious to me that a little bit of topping up and priming yourself with a bit of magnesium and reducing the vitamin D. In my case, I came down to about 4,000 IU. I'm back up to 10 now because my body's full of magnesium. I just stopped short of diarrhea, which you definitely want to do. And also, if you take vitamin C, I take liposomal vitamin C morning and evening. After a stroke, I really recommend that one. But that will also eventually lead to runny bowel movements, so you've got to be a little bit careful. Now, there is a type of magnesium that does get... So, in her first book, Carolyn Dean ran into exactly the same problem. Eventually, runny bowels, and there's only so much magnesium you can absorb. And she had every magnesium deficiency syndrome in the book, and she's a doctor. So tricky. Anyway, she developed this pico, I think we'd call it, pico magnesium. I'll put the pictures up here, probably up this side, maybe that side. Pico magnesium, which are very small magnesium ion particles. Now, magnesium can only get into our cell as an ion when it's in a liquid form and when it splits up from glycinate, for example, or malate, or citrate, or whatever form you've taken it. But this magnesium is meant to bypass runny bowel problems, and you're meant to be able to get a lot more into your system and, as I call it, load or saturate your system a little bit with magnesium. Now, at the same time, it means that it's not such a bad idea to eat a bit of cheese and a bit of calcium if I'm taking so much magnesium. The important thing is to balance them. You notice I put magnesium a bit higher because I believe I've lived a lot of my life building up plaque, building up too much calcium in the diet, unfortunately. And I think this is a very common problem. And a lot of heart problems occur because of calcification. A lot of heart arrhythmias and anomalies can be cured with magnesium. There are about 300, well, one book I started reading said 300 enzymatic reactions that require magnesium to occur in the body. Then they discover it's 600, then they discover it's 900. Now the number's up to almost 1,000 enzymatic reactions requiring magnesium as a cofactor. Hence, we cannot live without magnesium. That's why I'm talking about it. It's very important. And I've always heard how important magnesium is. Going back 15 years, I used to go to a naturopath called Philip Weeks, who had a Vega machine, and he used to try and get more magnesium into my system. But it's difficult to test for magnesium. Now, I think he used the Vega machine, but if you test your blood serum levels, only 1%, and actually only 0.5% really is in the serum, because magnesium is intracellular into our cells, most of it. So yeah, it's intracellular. You can have a red blood cell test that gives you a little more of an idea about the content of your magnesium in your body for the last 3 months, let's say. That's a more sophisticated test. And there's an iron magnesium test, which is just a laboratory test. It's not available to the public. That's the best test of all. But if you want to know if you're too alkaline or too acidic, you do a wee in the morning on some litmus paper. Now, if you're too acidic, that means too much calcium. If you're too alkaline, too much magnesium. I think I'm at the stage where I'm pretty sure of... I listen to my body, I check the bowel movements all the time, and it tells me how am I saturated or arriving at saturation point with magnesium. That's the best way. I think we can go and do all these blood tests, but it would be incredibly expensive to see how much magnesium and then how much magnesium in 2 weeks. Now, I must say I get about 750 milligrams of magnesium through my diet. That's quite remarkable, but remember, the requirements for my age and body and weight is about 600 milligrams of magnesium per day, and I need to keep topping up, keep inputting that magnesium into my body. I have to sustain that daily. Now, do remember that I need a little bit more, because I am trying to decalcify, if you can say such a thing, and I take diuretics with my medication, so that means I lose a bit. I take vitamin D. I need magnesium as a cofactor. The more vitamin D, the more magnesium. And to know how much, it's 50 to 100 milligrams of magnesium for 1,000 international units of vitamin D. So let's say a ratio of 1 to 10 milligrams to international units. So anyway, I'm not going to say that's a hard and fast rule for everybody. It's just what some people think the ratio should be. I don't think anybody really knows what the ratio should be, but we do know vitamin D requires magnesium. If I use a Sperti lamp that gives me UVB rays, I need some magnesium because it still goes through the liver and the kidneys, and I need magnesium as a prerequisite to make vitamin D. Otherwise, I calcify, because I deplete my magnesium. So there are many compounds, but I do recommend that this Pico magnesium was about 60 GBP for, I'm going to say 300 milliliters. I'm not sure. I will write the amount here on my clip. I mean, it's expensive, but it's a sophisticated way of taking magnesium. It's also worth considering liposomal magnesium, because as I do with my vitamin C, there are other substances that can be taken with a liposomal encapsulating form that fast tracks through the digestive tract without breaking it down, so it delivers it to destination much more efficiently. it doesn't break, well, actually the layers gradually break down. The fat dissolvable layers, and liposomal is as efficient as an IV, intravenous shot, let's say, as an injection. Even more so efficient, says book number 3 to me. Now, other topics. There might be one or two things left to say about magnesium. I've said it makes us drowsy. I've given a few reasons why. I mean, I had a lot of stiffness, cramps, problems with nerves. I really think if you feel any part of you is a bit stiff, I tell you one symptom, especially that post-stroke patients suffer, is heaviness in their limbs. Try magnesium. I've heard it's to do with a magnesium deficiency. Now, I always believed that a certain heaviness depended on proprioception returning, because one of the 4 qualities of proprioception is the feeling of weight in our arm or leg or whatever part of the body you're having trouble with. But if you've lost the presence, the bite of your nerves, if you've lost nerve response, then magnesium is tremendous. It really is waking up my nerves in a big way. So if I put my hand in the bucket of Epsom salts and take it out just a couple of minutes and stroke it, it's more sensitive. It's woken up the nerves a little bit. I mean, nerves are... Just remember the plants. If you've got magnesium, you're turning into a plant. If you've got too much calcium, you're turning into stone. And I know which of the two I'd like to be. Anyway, I've gone on quite a lot. Plenty of things left to say. There might be a magnesium too. I've spoken a little bit about there's only so much magnesium we can intake. So I know somebody's on 1,200 milligrams of magnesium a day. But again, let's say I'd taken too much magnesium for one day and I'm realizing it through runny bowels, something like this. Then I know I can take a little bit of cheese, for example, a bit more vitamin D, because that requires the magnesium. Costs. We could say magnesium's almost a currency, a precious currency, considering the whole world is being depleted. And it's a great antidote to many, many diseases and problems, especially to do with the heart, knee problems, all sorts of things happening with calcification, nerves. I really recommend it to somebody who needs to repair. And as I say in my dance, stone dance, magnesium and vitamin C work well together, because vitamin C donates its electrons to extinguish inflammation. This is a very important concept. It's very, very similar to earthing or grounding, the donating of electrons, and I've just made a clip on oil rig. And magnesium is working in a different way, guarding the gates, the calcium channel gates, and restoring a certain balance, which is naturally, I think, 10,000 times more magnesium than calcium, because that's the way that nature balances this out. So anyway, if you're taking a 1-to-1 ratio calcium and magnesium supplement, beware, because I believe we get enough calcium through our diet. If you feel that you are getting a bit stiff and you do need to take care of a few things, I really recommend magnesium. It will soften your whole system up. It will allow you to sleep like nothing else. And if you're not sleeping well on a little bit of magnesium, take a little bit more, because I'm going through a difficult period, but with the amount of magnesium I take, my eyelids drop like stone. And I'm somebody who used to sleep an hour a day, that's all, for a whole month. A couple of years ago, I was in trouble with my sleep, and I wish I'd known about magnesium back then. Anyway, I hope it's helped a little bit. And just remember to go slowly if you get into magnesium. Don't do anything drastic. Go very, very slowly. Just add one little supplement a day. Observe the effects very systematically. Check your blood pressure if you're doing magnesium, if you're on magnesium, because you could have, I was going to say a nasty surprise, but I mean a pleasant surprise, really. That's it. Just go slowly. You know you've reached. There's no danger of taking too much magnesium, except if your blood pressure gets too low. But you're not going to be in any danger because your body would eliminate it. Anyway, good luck on your magnesium journey, and enjoy all this green planet full of magnesium. It's here to support us, and it is running out, and we need to get enough into us to stay well. Take care. See you all next time.